I've always seen King David's second son Absalom as kind of a 2D flat sort of figure in the Bible. I didn't really know that much about him, and he seemed flat. But as I was studying for my most recent book that I'm working on, I was studying Absalom, and he is no longer a 2D figure in my mind. He is a 3D figure with flesh and bone. I've started to see him in a whole new light for the scoundrel that he really was. Who was he? What was he like? Let's talk about it. Stay tuned. Hi, my name is Rachel Pinkerton. I am author of the Parents of the Bible series, and my newest book is coming out in May, which is a look at different ways that we can ruin our kids, or not ruin our kids, based on the actions of parents in the Bible. I've been reflecting on what I have been writing, and Absalom is somebody I had never really known much about, and he has really come to life for me lately. Not necessarily in a good way, because as I said in the intro, he's a bit of a scoundrel. Well, that might not be harsh enough of a word. He's a piece of work. So some of the things that I've learned about Absalom is that he was personable. His father had this unmerited, undying devotion for him, regardless of whatever it was he did or was doing at the time. Yet, in spite of that undying devotion, his father never acknowledged the sin that he committed. And he committed several, but his father never acknowledged them, like even seemed to make mention to him they'd happened. Another way that Absalom was personable is that he knew how to get people to like him. After he had been reinstated to King David after his murder of his brother Ammon, he decided that he wanted to be a judge. But instead of going and talking to his dad about becoming a judge, he went and talked to all the townspeople and all the countrymen. And he was like, oh man, I wish I could be judge over you. And so then we could get this matter settled. And people liked him. But actually, he really didn't want to be a judge. He just wanted to make his dad look bad. One thing about Absalom that I didn't know is that he was beautiful. I knew he had, long hair, because he dies by getting hung in a tree by his hair. But I didn't realize that he was also beautiful, or, handsome. 2 Samuel 14:25 says that Absalom was praised for his beauty. From the sole of his foot to the crown of his head, there was no blemish on him. So that hair I mentioned a little bit ago, he would regularly get it cut because it would get too long. And occasionally he would weigh it, and it could be anywhere from 4 to 6 pounds worth of hair. I have long hair, and I am so glad mine is not that heavy. Absalom also had beautiful children. The Bible notes that his sons were praised for their looks, and his daughter was known for her beauty. But in spite of all this, Absalom was a mess, more so than I would have ever thought. So how was he a mess? Well, he was conniving. His eldest brother raped his sister. And that would be enough to make someone angry and want to kill someone else. But I think there was more to Absalom killing Ammon than just that. See, Absalom was the second son, and he would never be king if Ammon was alive. So he came up with a way to kill his brother and have no one be suspicious that it was about to happen. See, he asked for permission from his dad that his brother go with him off to a different city to hold a feast. And his dad gave permission. And during the feast, he killed his brother. He also was cunning and conniving in how he was going to become king himself. So part of the plan was make people like him by saying, oh man, I wish I could become a judge. And then when everybody liked him, he again went and asked his dad for permission to hold a feast in a different city. And this time he invited a bunch of like high-level people who knew nothing about what was going to happen. And he also had various, what the Bible calls spies, put in place. So that way when they heard the news of that he had been crowned king, then they could spread it all over the country. And then the poor unsuspecting people who were there just got caught up in the moment, and he was crowned king. He didn't stay king, but he was crowned king. In addition to being conniving, he had a blatant disrespect for others. David's trusted general was Joab. He used Joab to help get him out of exile after he had murdered his brother. And then, when he did come back, David said, well, he cannot see my face. And so he had to stay away from the court of King David for 3 years. Well, he didn't like this. He wanted to be able to see his dad. And so he sends word to Joab, hey, I want to talk to you. Joab ignores him. So he sends his servants to go burn Joab's fields. Joab kind of had to go talk to him then. The Bible doesn't mention that he made any restitution for the fields of Joab's that he destroyed. The Bible also never says that he even attempted to confess his sin to his father. He had no respect for others and what he should have been doing in regard to his interactions with others. The last thing I realized about him is that he had no concern for his father and for his father's reputation. After he murdered his brother and was granted access again to his father, there is no mention made that he ever acknowledged his sin, that he even apologized for it. In fact, his attitude is almost flippant, like, well, if I've done something wrong, then he better kill me. He didn't say it in those exact words, but that's a very close quote. He didn't care. Also, when his dad, the king, left the palace in Jerusalem to flee from Absalom, who he knew was coming his way to kill him, he left 10 of his concubines to take care of the palace. Absalom, at the advice of one of his advisors, slept with all of them, out in the open where everyone can see, giving no regard or respect to his father. And I guess that's proven also by the fact that he just wanted his dad dead. He didn't care about what happened to the other army members. I think he preferred to have them alive. It was just his dad that he wanted dead. So as I said in the beginning, I've always seen Absalom as like this 2D flat figure who tried to take his dad's throne, who killed his brother, who got hung in a tree and died. But it wasn't until I really studied him and I started digging into who he was, that I realized, no, he really had it in for his father. He really had an agenda that he was working on. These weren't all circumstantial happenstance things. He was working everything for one goal, and that was himself, to be king, when he actually wasn't even supposed to be king according to what God had wanted and what God had promised. So if you want to find out how Absalom fits into a book about parenting, be sure to check out my new book when it comes out in May. I look at a few different Bible parents that are well known, like King David, Jacob, Isaac, and Rebekah, and even Samson's parents. I look at the mistakes that they made with their parenting and how their parenting really affected their families. And then I look at how God worked in those families and used those families in spite of the mistakes, somewhat major mistakes that they made. In the meantime, I have a Bible study book about parents of the Bible, just looking at parents in the book of Genesis, and we look at Abraham, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob, and even Adam and Eve, as well as Samson's parents. I have learned a lot about these characters over the years as I've studied them, and I keep coming back to them because of the valuable lessons that we can learn from them and implement into our own lives, whether we're parents or not. Also available are 3 guided Psalms journals that go through each psalm and ask questions about who God is, how we can see Jesus in the Psalms, what connections can be made to other passages of Scripture, as well as opportunities for you to make application to your own life and write a prayer based on the Psalm. All these books are available on Amazon. A link to these is in the description below. If you go to my website, rachelpinkerton.com, you can sign up for my newsletter and get a free copy of the first 5 chapters of the Guided Psalms Journals. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.